Hi, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm Abigail Harrison. I'm the Chief of Digital and Innovation and CIO at the North West Ambulance Service. So I'm going to share some reflections on how we're enabling digital innovation and solving everyday problems at NWAS. But first, I'll just give you a little bit of context. So NWAS is the largest ambulance service in the UK. We receive over 1.4 million calls, emergency calls per year. We also provide the NHS 111 and patient transport services for the North West. We have well over 6,000 staff, 109 ambulance stations, 3 emergency operations centre, other kind of call centres as well. We have an operational area which covers approximately 7.5 million people over 5 counties. So we have a really unique position working across the system and touching all aspects of healthcare. So I've been the CIO here at NWAS for about 18 months, just a little bit more. And before I came here, I worked for a long time in Salford and regionally and nationally in the NHS, helping other teams try and improve their services. And what I started to notice over time was that it seemed to be even more difficult when technology was involved. So you would see people with a good idea getting stuck with information governance or not having the funding or not being able to get access to the right technical people. And it seemed to kind of slow things down. And we know the evidence tells us that we're not great at implementing innovations, and the same goes for digital in terms of the time it takes. So I became really interested in this problem because actually, we know that technology and digital innovation will be one of the key ways that we achieve a sustainable service and the best possible outcomes for our patients and the best experience for patients and staff. And yet we don't seem to be able to implement digital solutions as quickly as perhaps you see in other areas of your life. And so why aren't these things that could be changing the way we do things, why are they not spreading like wildfire across the NHS? And how do we make it easier to implement digital solutions? So, of course, we know that there are reasons why it's difficult. So we have an incredibly complex system which can make it difficult, more difficult to innovate and work around that. But we also know that our staff are already under a lot of pressure. We might not always be meeting some of our performance standards. How do you play around when you're already stretched and you don't have the capacity or the skills or the leadership will to kind of disrupt the way we do things? And with all of that complexity and difficulty, we literally have people's lives in our hands. And our systems and our structures and our governance are built with that in mind. So they keep patients safe, they keep our staff safe, but they're not necessarily built in a way that gives us the space to experiment, to test, to fail, to learn, and to kind of disrupt the way that we do things. And one of the interesting things I thought during the pandemic has been that we've been able to achieve things that we've been trying to achieve for years. So whether that be kind of data sharing or video consultations is a good example. And I think there are lots of factors, but one of the key ones is that the balance of risk changed. So for the first time, it was riskier not to do things differently than it was to stay the way we were. So when I started at NWAS, I was gifted an ambitious digital strategy, and we had brilliant digital teams. But what I would say is I think the kind of digital teams and the organisation were a little bit kind of frustrated with one another because the teams were overstretched and they didn't have the capacity or the method or the kind of space to take on new ideas that were outside of the things that we had in place, like the service desk or the change advisory board and the things that were set up for kind of either problems, immediate technical problems, or big kind of projects or critical system changes. And actually the digital teams were often seen or could be perceived as blockers, which was definitely not what they were intended to be. But people like information governance and BI and IT were brought to the table so late that they were often surfacing new costs or risks or issues that hadn't been factored into the early planning. So back to this question, how do we make this easier then? How do we make it so that these are not blocking functions, but kind of enabling functions? So the first thing, there's 3 things I'm going to talk through and I'll give some examples. And I think the first thing we've done is to give people permission to have a go, whether that's the digital teams or the staff in the wider organisation. So we've created a space where we kind of create our own rules, and it's slightly to the edge or under the radar of the organisation, and we explicitly sought permission from the execs not to have to keep and coming asking for permission every time we wanted to test something, as long as it was small enough, and I'll talk more about that. And I've got a whole thing about pirates, which I could do a whole session on, so I won't go into that, but essentially it's about making your own rules and sticking to them. The second key thing is that we're driven by the methodology and the theory, and we're building the skills in the team for change. So keeping it really simple, model for improvement, PDSA, enabling us to test ideas. And if we need more of a framework, we run innovation cycles, 6 weeks, and we use the Agile Sprint framework as well. I'll go into that in more detail. And the third thing is that we've actually created some capacity for this kind of work in the teams, because they're so busy just keeping us safe, keeping the lights on. So we've got a couple of technical project roles that give us a bit of added capacity. We've got 2 developer roles, so only small. We didn't have any development roles when I started. We've got 2 really important clinical digital innovation roles, specifically responsible for leading this kind of work, and then working really closely with the PMO and the transformation team as well. So I'll go give you some examples. So this to the edge, under the radar space we've created is called the Digital Design Forum. So we meet every week, and anyone can attend from across the organisation with any kind of idea or problem. So it might be that it's kind of a big intractable problem, something we've really been trying to solve for ages, or it could be just really small, just something that we could just do better. It might be a disruptive technology. So here's, what do we do with this? Or it could be a really well thought through kind of good idea that somebody has that they want some help with. And our code, our pirate code, is that we always say yes. We keep it small, and this is where the method really comes in, and this is what's hard, I think, with technology. How do we test it without getting into a big business case, or having to shell out a lot of money? How do we get this small enough that we can have a go and learn and evaluate before we scale it up? And we always make sure that we do it safely. So safety and that safe testing is the key thing, and that we do it together in collaboration between the kind of operations and the digital teams. And the people that we've got on there are absolutely key. So we've got information governance, we've got our cyber lead, security lead, we've got lots of different people from the IT team, so our developers, our CTO, the business systems team, infrastructure people that understand kind of how to use Teams and the new kind of technologies that we've got available to us, and HR, ops, clinical leads. So it's all about having the right people there to make it safe when we test, and really positioning them as enabling functions. And I know they're really, really proud that they're there right at the beginning, and that they're seen as kind of an enabling change. So this forum allows us to not just innovate, but also just to solve some everyday problems. And I'll give you a few examples really quickly. So we've created a product called SafeCheck, which is a digital version of our old paper vehicle and medicine checks. We have been looking at interactive dashboards. We've got a whole piece of work around smart stations, smart people, smart vehicles, with lots of different work streams. Lots of people come to us trying to create their own knowledge management solution or communication tool or information sharing, but not necessarily doing it in a very safe way or using the technology right. So we've got lots of work streams around SharePoint and Power Apps and all the things that we can do on 365. Really simple things like safely sharing data with our police colleagues that saved us and them a lot of time. We've got some stuff around stores that's linked to the smart stations. Interestingly, when COVID kind of hit, we didn't plan for this, but it meant we were able to much more quickly respond to some of the urgent requirements. We created a test, track and trace app, and we were looking at lateral flow. So if we need to do something a bit more of a framework around it, we do use sprints as well. And actually one of the key things here has been around interoperability, because it's so tricky and difficult to kind of reach our end goal that we're really trying to break it down into individual small steps. So the first one was around, can we see data in PTS from the 9s? Can we link up our 111 and 999 service so we can better pass calls? And so it's really about, let's take this massive goal, but just take one step at a time. Let's just keep achieving that next bit. And that method really enables us to break it down. So in summary, how do we make it easier? Well, It's all about people, isn't it? So it's about empowering our people with the permission to have a go, to fail, to test, to learn, the skills to actually do that. How do I make it small? How do I break it down? How do we do this quickly? And the capacity and the space to do that. But I should say we are only just at the beginning. We're just starting out. There's lots more for us to learn, and we're really happy to collaborate. And if there's anything you've heard that you're interested in, please drop me a line. Okay, thank you.